The sound of a champagne flute shattering on the Italian marble floor echoed through the ballroom. For a moment, it was the only thing you could hear above the gasps of 150 guests. My future mother-in-law, Eleanor Hamilton, had just wrapped up her toast, and it wasn't so much a toast as it was a public execution. She'd called me a charming but ultimately simple girl, a gold-digging nobody, unworthy of her son and totally unprepared for the Hamilton family legacy. Her voice, dripping with fake pity, still hung in the air. But what she didn't know, what none of them knew, was that their family's entire legacy was about to be decided, not by her, not by her husband, but by me. And I was about to give them the most expensive lesson of their lives. It all started with love, or what I thought was love. I met Liam Hamilton at a small tech conference in Austin. He wasn't like the other venture capital guys. There was a genuine curiosity to him, a kindness in his eyes that felt totally out of place. He was funny, and he actually listened. When he found out I was a coder, his eyes lit up. He said he was captivated by my passion. I think I was just captivated by the idea of being seen. I didn't grow up with a trust fund or summers in the Hamptons. My mom was a single mother who worked 2 jobs just to keep a roof over our heads. I didn't go to an Ivy League school. In fact, I dropped out of Stanford after 2 years. Not because I couldn't handle it, but because it felt too slow, too theoretical. I had this idea burning in my mind, and I couldn't just sit in a lecture hall while the future was waiting to be built. I taught myself 4 different coding languages from library books and online forums. I poured thousands of hours into my work, fueled by cheap coffee in my tiny apartment, completely convinced I could create something that would change the world. When Liam introduced me to his family, the Hamiltons of Hamilton Industries, I might as well have stepped onto another planet. Their world was old money, with portraits of stern-faced ancestors on the walls and conversations about polo matches and European art auctions. His father, Charles, was a titan of industry who'd inherited a manufacturing empire. His mother, Eleanor, was the gatekeeper of their social standing, and her whole life seemed to be about maintaining the purity of their reputation. It was obvious from the get-go I didn't belong. It wasn't one big thing, just 1,000 tiny cuts. Eleanor would say something like, "Chloe, what a unique choice of dress. So bold of you," with a tone that suggested she was shocked I owned one. Charles would pat me on the shoulder and call me Liam's little project, like I was a fixer-upper he was amused by. They were obsessed with my education, or what they saw as my lack of it. The second I mentioned I hadn't finished my degree, you could feel the frost descend on the room. To them, a diploma wasn't about knowledge. It was a certificate of belonging, and I didn't have one. Liam tried. I'll give him that. He'd squeeze my hand under the dinner table. "They just need to get to know you," he'd whisper later. But he never really stood up to them. He was a product of that world, terrified of rocking the boat and risking his inheritance. He saw their insults as quirks, not the calculated cruelty they were. He wanted me to fit into his world, but he was never willing to challenge that world for me. What the Hamiltons and even Liam didn't know was that I wasn't just Liam's little project. For the last 3 years, I'd been living a double life. By day, I was Chloe Evans, the quiet girlfriend who worked in tech. But by night, I was Nightingale. Nightingale wasn't a person. It was a ghost in the machine. It was the name I gave to the predictive data analysis engine I've been building since I left Stanford. It was my life's work. This algorithm could sift through mountains of market data, social media trends, financial reports, supply chain movements, even satellite imagery, and predict market shifts with a terrifying 94% accuracy 6 months out. It was the kind of tech that companies would kill for. I kept my identity as its creator a complete secret. I wanted the work to speak for itself, free from the world's judgment about my background, my gender, or my unfinished degree. I operated through encrypted channels and a shell corporation, the sole anonymous architect of a technology about to be worth a fortune. The irony is, I decided to sell it for Liam. I saw the pressure his father put on him to land a huge career-defining deal for Hamilton Industries. So I hatched a plan. I had my shell corporation's broker approach them with an offer. They'd never know it was me. They'd just see a chance to buy a revolutionary AI that would drag their aging company into the future. The price tag was $90 million, a staggering number, but honestly, just a fraction of what it was truly worth. It wasn't about the money for me. It was about giving Liam a massive win, securing his future, and, in my own secret way, proving to his family I was more than they could ever imagine. Of course, the Hamiltons jumped at it. Charles saw his chance to be hailed as a visionary. He bragged to his friends that he'd discovered this diamond in the rough AI company. He had no idea the diamond was sleeping in his guest room on the weekends. The deal for my shell company, Innovate AI, took 6 months to finalize. I was an invisible player in the biggest game of my life. Liam would come home from meetings, buzzing. "You won't believe this algorithm, Chloe. It's like magic. Dad's calling it the future of the company." I'd just smile and nod, my heart pounding in my chest. During the legal phase, my lawyer insisted on one very specific, non-negotiable clause. We called it the Intellectual Property Integrity Clause, Clause 11.3b. It was unusual, but I spun it as a demand from the eccentric, anonymous creator. It basically said that the final transfer of the IP was dependent on the Hamiltons acting in good faith. It specifically defined a bad faith action as any public statement by the company's leadership or their immediate family that disrespected the principles of innovation and merit the technology was built on. And here was the kicker. It gave the creator, me, the sole right to terminate the deal instantly with a written notice. No takebacks. The Hamiltons' lawyers freaked out. They called it unprecedented and unenforceable. But Charles, blinded by the glory, got impatient. "It's some nonsense from a paranoid coder," he boomed over the phone to his legal team, a call Liam had put on speaker. "Who cares? We'll get the tech. The ghost can have his little feel-good clause. Make it happen." And just like that, they signed. They had no idea they'd just handed me a loaded gun. As the closing date got closer, their condescension got worse. It was like the $90 million deal made my so-called inadequacy even more obvious to them. At one dinner, Eleanor went on and on about the importance of a strong family, looking right at me, making it clear I was the weak link. Charles once asked me, in front of their friends, what I planned to do with my life once Liam was a big-shot executive. "A girl like you must be thrilled to finally have some security," he said with a wink. Every comment was another stone on a pile that was getting dangerously heavy, and Liam's response was always the same: a pained look, a whispered apology later, and a promise that things would be different once the deal is done. He was living in a fantasy future while I was drowning in the be now. The night of the party was the grand finale. Hamilton Industries booked the city's most expensive hotel ballroom. They flew in reporters from financial papers, industry analysts, everyone who was anyone. It wasn't a celebration of a merger, it was a coronation for Charles Hamilton. I wore a simple black dress and felt like a complete imposter in a sea of couture and diamonds. Liam, handsome in his tux, held my hand, but his grip was clammy. His attention was everywhere but on me, totally oblivious to the storm brewing inside me. The speeches started. Charles took the stage, his voice booming with self-congratulation. He talked about vision, legacy, and his bold leap into the future. He thanked his team, his board, his family. The creator of the technology, of course, was never mentioned. In his version of the story, he was the hero. Then he invited Eleanor to the stage. "My beautiful wife," he said, "the bedrock of our family." Eleanor glided to the microphone of vision in emerald silk. She started with the usual thank yous, smiling at the crowd. Then her eyes found me. A small, cruel smile played on her lips. "As we celebrate this new chapter for Hamilton Industries," she began, her voice smooth as honey, "we are also preparing for a new one for our family. Our son, Liam, has brought a young woman into our lives." She paused, letting the entire room's attention fall on me. I felt hundreds of eyes turn my way. Liam squeezed my hand, but it felt more like a restraint than a comfort. "Chloe," Eleanor continued, her voice dripping with fake pity, "she is proof that ambition can be found in the most unlikely of places. She comes from a very different background without the advantages of education or breeding that we might take for granted." Murmurs rippled through the room. My face was on fire. I looked at Liam, begging him with my eyes to do something, say anything. He just stood there, frozen, a mask of horrified indecision on his face. "Some might see her as an opportunist," Eleanor's voice rose, "a girl latching onto a name and a fortune. And who can blame her? It's a tale as old as time." She raised her glass. "But we are choosing to be charitable, to be continue,